Hello students, and welcome back to the subject of industrial management. Today we will be talking about plant layout. In the last discussion, if you recall, we talked about factory location. Okay, so the factory as a unit and how would you identify a suitable location. Now today we will be talking about plant layout. So when we talk about plant layout, we are talking about the internal arrangement. So if you happen to see any factory layout, you will see there are machineries, there are certain types of equipments, okay, within the production unit. Clear? So how are these machinery arranged? How effectively are they arranged? Is what factory layout is normally about. So it is a physical arrangement of various equipments, tools, machineries, machines, okay, and it also includes an arrangement of processes. So one process, let us say the process of dyeing here is coloring, okay, so you could have one unit here referring to coloring, dyeing, all these sort of things. So you could be talking in terms of physical arrangement of various machineries and equipments. You could also be talking about the physical arrangement of facilitating the various processes involved in the manufacturing of your goods and services. Okay. Now here we are also talking about allocation of space. So one is arrangement, how you are going to arrange it in a particular manner. So this machinery will be coming here or wherever you think is suitable. You are also talking about the allocation of space. So how much space would be allotted to this particular machinery, okay, or equipment. So when we are talking about layout, we are talking in terms of machines, we are talking in terms of space, we are talking in terms of sections, we are talking in terms of departments, and how all these things will help to facilitate material handling, will also help us facilitate storing and warehousing of our could be raw materials, semi-produced products, or even the finished products. You would also be talking about the departments, sections, and various other utilities like having a washroom close by, or a canteen close by, or a restroom close by. So all these arrangement that goes in a proper layout of various aspects in the functioning of an industrial unit. Remind you, when we talk about plant layout, we are talking about the internal arrangement of various resources and equipments and space allocation. Okay, so now apart from this, layout also looks into the possibility of revision. Let us say you in the future you want to expand. So are you having sufficient space? So you will have to think in terms of long span of time. So maybe in another 5 years time you plan to extend, or maybe in 20 years time you plan to expand and grow. So you should have a vision as to the potential for growth and expansion happening. You could also make provision for some revisions that may be required, some modification that may be required with the times to come. So these aspects also you would want to take into consideration. So maybe you would close down this section and have another unit here, or you could have a new unit altogether. So when we talk about layout, we are talking about an existing arrangement as well as the future possibilities that we could be having. Now, why is arrangement so very important? Because if we don't have a pre-planned arrangement, layout of our resources, of our machineries, of our space, then there is a high possibility of increase in wastages of resources, of our time, of our efforts. Okay, there could be bottlenecks meaning congestion. So if you have not, let us say, planned the space allocation here, the aisle space, so you could have a bottleneck here, jamming of material. So this could lead to delays, and that again would increase your cost of production. Okay, So and it would also impact your productivity and bring down your profits. So layout is very important. Let me repeat once again. When we talk about layout, what are the things that we are keeping in mind? Layout is nothing but the internal arrangement of various machineries, tools, equipments. It is also allocation of space. How much space are you going to give to a particular section? How much space are you going to give to a particular department? Where are you going to store your raw material, your semi-finished products, your finished products? Okay, so you, and also making provision, like I said earlier, having a washroom, canteen, the restrooms. Now all these aspects have to be well planned out. And so one is in the near future, what should be the state of arrangement for your various resources. And you should also have a provision for modification, that is the changes if need be, as well as the potential to grow and expand your layout. So these are some of the things that you need to keep in mind. Okay. Now let's look at the objectives. So we talked about the concept. Is the concept clear? Hopefully, I think you all have probably understood what I'm trying to tell you. It's very simple. It's an internal arrangement of various machines, machineries, equipments, allocation of space, okay, with the provision for modification and expansion of your existing layout. So these are some of the things that you need to keep in mind when you're talking about when you're talking about the concept of layout. Now let's talk about objectives. What are the objectives of plant layout? Okay, so why would you want to take so much trouble as to go into proper planning about your machineries and things like that? So under objectives, we are looking at the reasons as to why we need to have a proper plant layout. So the first is we are serious about increasing not just our production but our productivity as well. Okay, so we are talking about being efficient. We are talking about producing in the most effective manner and bringing down our wastages. So if everything is pre-planned in an appropriate manner, if the layout is very clear, then of course you're not only just talking in terms of increasing your production, you're also talking about injecting an element of efficiency, bringing about productivity, reducing the wastages, right? Next, so if you are very serious about productivity, you are also talking about increasing the quality of your goods and services. So once everything is pre-planned, you can be certain that the quality will also improvise, because you're going to cut down on the wastages, you're going to use the resources in the most efficient manner. Therefore, it will be reflected in the quality of your production. Thirdly, we will reduce the cost of production. So if everything is well arranged, well planned, okay, what will happen is you will bring down wastages, you will bring down the delays, you will bring down the bottlenecks or the jamming that may happen because the space is not properly utilized or misutilized. So if all these negativities are reduced, then you can also this will also help you to reduce the cost of production. Next is a proper layout will also ensure that there are no delays, like I was telling you. So this again is the fourth point actually. You will bring down the wastages, you will bring down the delays, and you will bring down bottlenecks and jams happening at workplace. Next is the floor space. Floor space is effectively used. So whatever little space you have, how best you have made use of it. So you are making optimum utilization of your resources. So how many machineries or equipments can be comfortably placed in a space? How best can you get access to your washroom, canteen? You should also be thinking about your fire exit if at all there are any problems. So every inch of your space is effectively used. Okay, then comes monitoring and supervision. Now if you look at our campus, if you are standing on the third floor, Okay, you can see what's happening on beneath the third floor. So you get a bird's view from top. So you don't have to literally get down to the foyer area to get to know what is happening there. You can be standing just outside the library and you're getting a perfect view of all the activities taking place here. So this is a very good way of monitoring the activity. So when you are planning your layout, it should be in such a manner that effective monitoring and supervision can be undertaken. Then the sixth point is, when you have plans, the existing plans, you could also be having plans to bring about modification, revision, adjustment, changes, as well as for the expansion of your layout. So these are some of the things that you could be taking into consideration. You could also be talking about the storage and transportation involved. So if your goods are produced in this section, okay, it's produced in one section, how will it be transported to the next section? Is a conveyor belt, I hope you know what's a conveyor belt. If you go to the airport, you'll see the suitcases and luggage being put on the conveyor belt and it moves. So are you going to have something like that? So is it how is it going to be transported? Are you going to have a forklift? Forklift is that small little motor run vehicle which has a sort of a forklift where it picks up the material and is transported. So how is transportation taking place? How is packaging taking place? How is storing taking place? So all these things also layout helps you to identify. And finally, it is so we talked about transportation here, and finally we are talking about working conditions. So is the working condition suitable? It should not be overcrowded. If there are too many machines here and too many people working, it will impact your productivity, it will impact your performance. So make sure that there is breathing space, there is sufficient space, ample space for people to work comfortably, because if they start getting uncomfortable, then it will have an impact on the production. So when we talk about the the objectives of plant layout, we are talking about, let me very quickly go through the points once again. We are talking about bringing an increase in productivity and efficiency in the operations that we are undertaking, which again is reflected in the quality of goods that we will be producing. Since we are going to cut down on all unnecessary wastages and delays taking place, we will also be bringing down the cost of production. So when we plan or when we have a plant layout, we will specifically look into these factors, that is wastages to be brought down, delays to be avoided, and bottlenecks or jamming or congestion has to be avoided. Then we are also going to look at the specific floor space. How well are we making good use of the space that is available to us? We will have a system which will help us have effective monitoring and supervision. We will also identify how our goods are going to be transported, how they are going to be stored, how they are going to be handled. So these aspects are also to be taken into consideration. And finally, we will ensure there is no overcrowding happening, that people and machines are having sufficient breathing space and they can work comfortably. So these are the points that you need to keep in mind when we are talking about the objectives of plant layout. Okay, so if you are now comfortable with what is plant layout, what are the objectives as to why you want to undertake plant layout, okay, then we could be now discussing about factory importance of factory layout. So the first reason as to why we want to really discuss about plant layout, and did I make a mention about factory layout? Please, I stand corrected, it is plant layout. Let me make clear in case if I have made an error there. So let's talk about the importance of plant layout. So there should be easy movement. So movement of men and material, transportation, okay, is an important aspect of plant layout. It helps us to look at various means and ways of movement taking place without harming our machines as well as our men at work. Next, how to deal with intermittent production is you finish one aspect of production, then it moves to another form of production. So something is happening here and then you have an output. But when it comes to an intermittent production system, then this sort of plant layout plays a very important role. Okay, then we have to talk about the safety of our workers, which is very important. So what sort of machineries are being employed, how safe is our worker, where is the provision for first aid, is there a resident doctor at the factory place, and how close is he at the production unit, where is the fire fighting equipments, okay, so where is the fire exit. So all these sort of things you have to plan out. So safety of our workers also needs to be planned out. Then there should be scope for change. You see, there could be new machinery being employed, new technologies being added, something being closed down and replaced with something better. So there should be an element of flexibility. There should be an element for and scope for change. You have to look into that aspect as well. Then we have control and coordination. So if plant layout is well planned out in advance, then there can be effective coordination, monitoring, control, supervision, which is very important, because if these aspects are put in place, then you could have a good quality goods and services. Next is storage. So it also helps you to identify where are you going to store your raw material, your semi-finished products, okay, and the finished product. So where best you can store these elements. So that has to be also worked out. It helps you to work out. Next is the gangway. Gangway is nothing but the aisle space. Now this would be aisle space. Between two machineries, this is the gangway. Between two sections, there is a gangway. So the aisle path or the aisle space that is required, which helps you in easy movement, which helps you to sort of give you a breathing space to work comfortably and move about with your equipments, or move around and transport your products, be it raw material, be it your semi-finished products or finished products. Next is material handling. So it also helps you to identify which is the best way to handle your material. So are you having a conveyor belt? Are you having a forklift? Are you manually transferring the raw material from one unit to another unit, and the product of that section is being manually transferred to another section? Or is there another conveyor belt or any other means? So you have to plant layout helps you to identify material handling aspect, which also will have an impact on your cost of production. If it is fully automated, if it is semi-automated, if it is done manually, it will have an impact on your cost of production. So this is also important. And finally, we are talking about the damage and spoilages happening. Okay, so how is your layout is very important, because it helps you to reduce the damages that may possibly happen. So let us say you have to pick up a stuff from here and move it here. Okay, that's quite a distance. So there is a possibility that some aspect is damaged, it gets deteriorated, there is spoilage is happening, there could be evaporation. If there are certain chemicals being employed, then there is a possibility of wastage happening, evaporation happening, spoilage happening. So when you have a plan in place, when plant layout is worked out, all these aspects can be taken care of. So it's very important that we have a proper plant layout in place before we get into the actual job of manufacturing or producing. So very quickly, once again, let me talk about the importance of factory layout. Why do we need factory layout at all? Because it helps us in the movement of men and material and machines. You can work this out well in advance, which helps a lot. Then it facilitates intermittent production. So production, like I said, from one unit to another unit, from one assembly to another assembly point, which can also be well planned out in advance. It also takes into consideration the safety and security of workers in a plant. How safe are they? Where is the doctor available? Where is the restroom? Where is the first aid? Where are the firefighting equipments placed? Where is the fire exit? All these aspects are well planned out in advance. Next, there is scope for change, modification, adjustments, expansion of your existing plant layout. So this again also helps us to take a decision well in advance. Next, it also brings about good effective control, coordination, supervision, monitoring, because everything is well planned out, and it facilitates all these aspects. Next is it also takes into consideration storage, warehousing and material handling. It talks about the aisle space, which is known as the gangway. So you know how best to use this passage, how best to use this aisle space, so that the comfort of both men and machines are taken into consideration. Next is material handling. How is the material best handled? Is it automated? Is it semi-automated? Is it manual? All those things are also worked out well in advance. And finally, plant layout also helps us to identify what are the possible damages, dangers, spoilages, evaporation taking place, and how best to avoid the same. So that is about the importance of plant layout. Now let's talk about factors influencing plant layout. Okay. So when you want to draw up a plant layout, what are some of the factors that you will look into and give a thought to those factors? The first factor is, what is the type of industry that you are planning to set up? Is it a chemical factory? Is it a food edible item that you are going to produce? Is it textile? So what sort of unit are you going to set up? What sort of industry you are going to set up will determine the type of plant layout that you would want. Next is the very nature of the plant layout. So there are two aspects here. One is, are you setting it up in a rural place area or is it urban? Now, if you have plans to set up a unit in a rural area, you will have more space horizontally because there's plenty of place available. So normally the plan works out in a horizontal manner. There is a more spread happening. Okay, and it's very spacious. Whereas in urban crowded places, it is less horizontal and more vertical. So you will have many stories here. So it will be more of a building sort of a thing. Because in cities and in urban areas, space is limited as against setting up a unit in rural area. So your plant layout, if it is in a rural area, will be more spread out, more horizontal in nature, more spacious. Whereas in an urban area, it will be much more narrow, as well as it will be multi-story in most cases. So this is another factor that you will have to take into consideration. Third is the nature of factory. Okay, nature of factory. This is plant. Nature of factory. Now, when we say nature of factory, how tall, how much space is there between the ground and the ceiling? What are the ventilation facilities available? The lighting, are you having natural light, or would you be using artificial lighting? Are you going to install it? Is it going to be totally AC, air conditioned, or what sort of things are really required in that factory? So if you are into, let us say, shrimp export unit, then you will have more of frozen aspects to be taken into consideration. Machinery, the type of machinery that is going to be employed would be totally different. So the nature of factory will also be a determining factor. Next is the production process, the actual production process that you are going to employ. The type of work, the volume of work, how much work is going into producing the final product, what are the various components, what are the assembly units employed to produce the product. So the production process will play an important role. Then we have the space available. Okay, so space here is space here to place your, of course, machineries, as well as handling those various machineries and resources. And for example, you could have a unit for, if you're into leather products, one is you have to wash, clean and beat the skin, that will later be converted into leather. So in one unit you will be doing all the cleaning, washing, and shaping the skin of the carcass that you have got. Next would be cutting it. See, when you get the direct skin of let us say sheep, for example, or let us say buffalo or whatever, it will be in a very awkward sort of a shape, so you have to cut it out, and so cutting will be employed here. Then you could be coloring it and using chemicals, so you could have so many aspects happening here. So that space, how are you going to allocate this space, which unit? So first is washing, so you could have your washers and springs and stuff like that, sprinklers, for a good wash. So constant flow of water and all these things will be taken into consideration. So you have to work out accordingly. Next is the space required for machines. So what sort of machines are being employed? How best are they placed? Which machines will be dealing with raw material? Which set of machines will be dealing with the semi finished products, and which would be finally dealing with packaging, and which machines will be handling the products will play an important role. Then we have various facilities for the workers. So we will look at what are the needs of the workers in terms of their comfort, in terms of ensuring that there are proper washroom with good flow of water. There is drinking water. There are canteens, there are restrooms. All these aspects you have to take into consideration. Then what are the management policies? What are the management policies? Does the management expect to change with the changing times? Is the management okay with expanding their business unit? There is a possibility that the business unit will grow and expand. So what are the policies and what is the vision of the management is important. Then the size of output.